Now, the 8-year tenure of President Buhari, which commenced on May 29, 2015, comes to an end on Monday, May 29, 2023. Now, activities of the inauguration of the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu commenced weeks ago, and the inauguration proper is actually slated to take place at Eagle Square in Abuja by 10 a.m. on Monday. Now, President Buhari on Thursday conferred on the President-elect Bola Tinubu and his Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima highest honors of GCFR and GCON, respectively. President Muhammadu Buhari has asked ministers to remain in office until the end of his tenure, contrary to the expectation that, he will dissolve the cabinet before the valedictory Federal Executive Council meeting on Wednesday. Now, the challenges before the incoming administration are enormous, from policy priorities, economic challenges, security concerns, corruption and governance, social and developmental issues, and international relations as well. But we have in the studio joining us Jide Ojo. He's a public affairs analyst. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Daka Juma.
And we also have on standby Umar Sani. He's a PDP chieftain, and Comrade Musa Ali Otigba, the National Coordinator, APC National Coalition for Mass Mobilization 2023, and Director of Campaign and Mobilization Amalgamated APC Support Groups, who will be joining us later. Now, thank you so much for joining us once again, Mr. Jide Ojo.
It's my pleasure.
Now, if you look at the newspapers today, you'd actually see, a constant or a consistent, story of the president, that's the outgoing president, Muhammadu Buhari, and his tenure, how he said he's actually run a good race, and, a lot of other things. But being a neutral party right now, what is actually your assessment on the last 8 years of the president?
Well, the 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari is a mixed grill of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you can situate the performance of the president against several benchmarks. 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege and honor of presenting a paper at a workshop here in Abuja that was organized by Konrad Adenauer Foundation, a German international NGO, for technical assistance and special advisors to the president, to the ministers. It was a 2-day event here in Abuja. And my presentation was on the legacy of the president. And researching for that paper showed me quite a lot of things were done and achieved by the outgoing president. Remember, governance is tripartite. It's a trilogy. You have the executive, the legislature, judiciary. You also have federal, state, and local government. So, horizontally and vertically, you have people who are saddled with responsibilities to do certain things. When a president is judged to have done very well, that means he has the full cooperation of these 3 arms and 3 tiers of government, because everything rubs off on the president. So, if I want to look at what were the challenges, Buhari came when the price of crude was lowest. I think it was about $25–30 per barrel way back in 2015. So there was about 60% revenue shortfall. And then, of course, in 2020, we had to battle COVID-19 for close to 2 years. This in itself impacted negatively on what the proposed achievement. Then you look at the fact that we went into recession in 2016 or thereabout, and which was what informed the economic recovery and growth plan. Now, we are not where we ought to be. In fairness, we should have achieved a lot better than what the outgoing president is leaving us with. However, we're not where we also used to be. So it's a modest achievement, but that can be contextualized as to, you see, I choose to see the cup as being half full rather than being half empty.
So you can't
there are those who say, oh, this administration has taken off from top to bottom. No, that is not entirely true.
Okay.
To an extent, yes, we are not where we ought to be in the Committee of Nations in terms of, I mean, the aspiration was health for us by 2020, housing for us by 2020, food for all by 2020, everything for us by 2020. 2020 has come and gone. Where are we? Issue of Millennium Development Goals and later social SDGs, that's Sustainable Development Goals. 17 of them, where are we? We are not where we ought to be on all of that. When you look at the Corruption Perception Index, we are 150 over 180 countries surveyed by Corruption Perception by Transparency International as at last year. When you look at the Human Development Index, we are not where we ought to be. When you look at the poverty rate, 133 over 133 million Nigerians said to be below poverty, living below poverty. When you look at unemployment, it's 33.3. That in itself, all of this put together will tell you that, oh, this administration hasn't delivered on its campaign from the way it ought to. However, we need to also now put in context what I was saying earlier about those challenges. You have a scenario that a president came in and it was almost zero empty budget, empty treasury he met. So he met an empty treasury, the revenue was 60% shortfall in revenue. So if you are earning 100 naira before, you are now earning 40 naira. You cannot do as much. So it resulted to borrowing. Again, that worries me. One thing that, let me say in full context, there are those challenges faced by this administration that I can classify as being a force majeure. When you say force majeure, you are saying something you could not help. Something that happens, a natural disaster. So you have this flood, 2022, you have the COVID-19, you have quite a number of other challenges. But there are also those that it's inflicted on itself. And let me put that in context too. This president in 2015 appointed how many ministers? 36. But by 2019, despite the fact that you have very heavy revenue shortfall, you decided to go for 43 ministers. Why do you need that? Rather than reducing the cost of governance, this administration has increased substantially the cost of governance. And that worries me. Because when this president came under the change mantra in 2015, part of the campaign was that he was going to reduce the cost of governance. So we were looking forward to him selling off at least 2/3 of the presidential air fleet, reducing the number of ministers and ministries, implementing on Ronsaye committee report, also carrying out several other reforms that will ensure that we have frugality in our budgeting system. But what we saw is that billions of naira were still being voted for welfare and entertainment, state house budget, billions for travels. As in, you are putting close to, sometimes I think about 10 billion for travel. You are not doing commercial. You have presidential air fleet. So when you look at this, these are self-inflicted. But I've told you the one that is force majeure that you can't help. COVID-19 was not envisaged. Then his health challenge also presented a huge, way back in 2017. I think for about 8 months in 2017, it was on medical tourism trying to attend to his health. So these are the way I see it. We are not where we ought to be, but we are not also where we used to be. Because in fairness, as I said on another media platform, this president prioritized the completion of abandoned projects. Many of the abandoned projects of Goodluck Jonathan and previous administration, he tried to complete them, like the rail line, Abuja-Kaduna rail line.
Yeah, he actually said that his administration is best in road infrastructure.
Heavily. These 3 major roads that he delivered on, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Second Niger Bridge, and Abuja-Kaduna, Kano, Maiduguri, they are legacy projects. There are 12 dams that was completed under this administration. There are several other legacy projects. Even when you look at legislation, this is the president that gave the Persons with Disability the National Disability Act and a commission to see to the welfare and well-being of the persons with disability. You may say, oh, what is the big deal? You are having about 30 million Nigerians who are persons with disability. That's a significant number. And that number is even much more than many African countries. And that's the community of, because according to UN statistics, 15% of Nigeria is made up of persons with disability. So he gave them National Disability Act. Look at the commission that is headed by Honorable Lalu now. Then you look at the petroleum industry, at the constitutional alteration. I wrote in my column in The Punch about 3 weeks ago that this is an administration that altered the constitution the most. You know what I mean? In 2018, he altered it. He signed 5 alteration laws. In 2023, he has signed 16. And this 16 happens to be one that even was against the run of play. Buhari said he doesn't believe in restructuring. But on his way out, in March 2023, he was able to alter the constitution. And 3 of those alterations stood out for me. And what are they? Removal of electricity from the exclusive legislative list, removal of correctional center, which we formerly known as prisons, from exclusive legislative list, and then the removal of railway from exclusive legislative
Okay,
list.
Mr. Jide, now let's talk about, the healthcare sector. Now, as it is, the president actually built an international standard, wing, that's a hospital in the villa. Meanwhile, if you come out, take a look at some of our hospitals, especially the public hospitals, there's so much that actually needs to be done. Not to talk of the doctors who are actually on strike at the moment, not to talk of the brain drain of doctors, and then the bill that was actually passed, a few months ago. So what is your take on that?
Again, it's a potpourri of issues. Unfortunately, he didn't do well in education and health. Sincerely speaking, what he considered as achievements, I do not foresee that as a serious achievement. Although he did a bit for the health sector, there is this 1% of that is meant to 1% of the budget for funding of health care delivery. But when you look totally, Johnson, is it Joesu are on strike now, indefinite strike. Last week, National Association of Resident Doctors were on strike. They've been on strike several times. And then of course, you are on point when you talk about brain drain. Many Nigerians, thousands of them, have relocated to UK, to Saudi Arabia, to other African countries, and because of the situation at home, which is not palatable. So, and this would, when I listen to First Lady Aisha Buhari say, the incoming association will not need to go abroad for Medicare. And why didn't the husband stay at home and enjoy that Medicare that he has provided in Asoro? Remember, there were newspaper report some years ago that even Aisha herself said that in Asoro Clinic, they do not have X-ray machine. It was that bad. X-ray. just basic X-ray machine. They do not. That was some 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
But it's good that they have funded it now to a place. To
so
a level.
with all this analysis being done, we've seen how the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari has been. How would you rate, his administration? Let's say just in one word.
It's very difficult to rate it in one word without being pejorative. You know why I said that? Because it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged thing. I will say, like I've tried to do, positive things and negative things that he has done. So on the whole, he did his own bit. And history will rate him one way or the other, whether he actually... Because even yesterday, I was at National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies commissioning of their new permanent site, which was commissioned by the president. And the National Assembly leadership was commending him that he signed over 100 critical laws. Fine, that's a very good one. And then, of course, we said he delivered on infrastructure. But there were more grants to be covered, which were not covered. And for that singular reason, many people may not remember him in a very positive way, because now he himself is feeling the hit that maybe he did so much and the appreciation is not coming in. But I feel that some of those lack of appreciation was as a result of, you are doing one positive thing, but you are doing 2-3 things that are not okay. So people are not going to see that 1 or 2 positive things. They are most likely going to see those
negative actually sells fast.
Yeah. So that is why it's quite difficult to say, I won't say he's the best president Nigeria has ever had. I'm sure he could not even rate himself as the best president Nigeria. But he did his bit within the available resources. And I will say this as a finality. He did not oversight his lieutenants well enough. So they were able to run rings around him.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mr. Jide Ojo, for taking time out to, discuss this particular issue with us. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you.